Welcome to episode 40 of Small Biz Life. 2 mistakes that can destroy your business.
That sounds ominous. Dun dun dun.
Does this sound familiar?
Oh my god, I have so much to do today.
Don't forget to breathe.
But I have almost 400 emails in my inbox and 30 phone calls to make.
Have you looked into getting a virtual assistant yet?
Oh, and I need to schedule all my social media posts.
Did you drink anything today?
I had coffee.
Did you eat today?
Did I mention coffee's a bean?
This is Small Biz Life.
Wow, so that intro sounded a little scary, destroying your business. But I really think that what we're going to talk about this week ends up either with people not getting their businesses even started or your business going out of business fairly quickly.
Or the worst thing really is it makes people think that their business is started. However, it's really not, potentially.
This is true. So I'm Kristen Ingram. Welcome to Small Biz Life.
And I'm Jeffrey W. Ingram.
And we are a married couple that are small business owners, and we're going through this journey with you on the Small Biz Life.
Yes, the roller coaster that it is, it might be quite a ride, but hopefully in the end, it can be a win for all of us.
So these two things that we're going to talk about today are really the two items that need to sync together. If you've listened to the podcast before, I said that if you're not doing one of two things as your primary focus, then you're going in the wrong direction. And those two things are sales and delivering products and services. And that's kind of what we're going to talk about today. Because these two things, if you don't do them, your business isn't going to get off the ground. Mm-hmm. And that's building an audience and having clearly defined products and services.
And let's be clear, a lot of you might even think that you have a business because you have either products or services or you have an audience. I know in my journey in the world building side of things, a lot of the artists I meet refuse to even think about building an audience. They're so consumed about building the products they want to sell to people, they fail to realize that if they can't sell them, then they have nothing that's paying for the next group of artwork to go through.
Right. And I see this a lot where people will develop a product or service and they will chuck it up online and like, ta-da, look, I'm a business. And then they get crickets.
Yeah. The quality of your work will not indicate the sales that you have.
Right. And if you've ever been on maybe some free webinars or you've purchased a book or a coaching package or something like that, and you've kind of thought, wow, really? Like this person is charging this much for that?
What I do is so much better than what they do.
But the thing is that they have audience and they've put together a plan to build audience so that they get sales.
Yes.
Because I think the thing that a lot of people don't realize when they go into business, especially if you're doing something online, but this even works with services, is that you're going to have to touch about 10 people to get one sale. And that works online as well. So if you want to sell a course or you want to sell a product to 2,000 people, then you need to reach 20,000 people.
One of the stories I like to talk about when I talk about this is the domination of Windows. I mean, a multi-billion-dollar company because of a piece of software. Now, there's been arguments since its beginning. Was it the best? It was not the best. It was definitely not the first. But the thing was, it was ready to be shipped out to the public at the right time. They took advantage of it. They marketed it. They sold it until a point for which, for 2 decades, they dominated the industry.
Well, and I think if you think about it too, they built an audience for themselves, right? Now, their audience initially was computer manufacturers because if they could not get into the computers, right, that were shipping, then their business would not succeed.
Yeah. No, a lot of people don't realize the first version of Windows, if you're an old school user, you probably know is Windows 3.1. That means there was Windows 1 and 2 and some minor iterations along with that as well too. It didn't take off to 3.1 for a variety of reasons. However, they used version 1 and version 2 to build up an audience with manufacturers who were more than willing to help sell their product because they thought they could sell more of their product if they included it.
So when you're talking about building an audience, this is really overwhelming for a lot of people because they think, how am I going to get myself in front of 10 times as many people as I need to generate sales?
Yes.
And so there are a couple different ways that you can do this. If you're a local business, you need to be networking locally. You need to get in front of people. Buying ads is not going to be enough to build a local business. You have to get out there and meet people and meet the right people. So if you are a home improvement person, you want to get in touch with general contractors. You want to get in touch with realtors. You want to be networking at events where people have money so they can afford to do home improvements.
And think about this. If you have the pleasure of having a contractor who does work for you, who's really good, think about how much advertising that person does. Are they in the Yellow Pages? Maybe not. Did you see an ad for them in the paper? Probably not. You probably were given that name from someone.
Right, exactly. So networking one-to-one, and we've done a whole episode on this. You can check out our networking episode. I'll link it in the show notes at smallbizlife.com. But if you're not out there networking, then it's really hard to get your name out there. Now, if you're an online business, and even if you're a local business, you can do this as well. Facebook ads, Google ads are a way to get yourself out there. But again, you're still looking for ways to build relationships. That's why a lot of the business coaches, a lot of online marketers are building Facebook groups to get engagement, to build a rapport with people, and then sell them products later.
And once again, to think about that, if you have purchased programs from these online superstars, if you're into the business side like we are, when you join their groups, they actually do interact with people. They respond in comment groups. I've had people respond to a question I've asked and I've got no feedback, and the person whose group it was responded. And this is a big name person, and it made me feel great to get that interaction with that person. It creates a certain loyalty that, wait, this giant person who I gave my money to be here is actually helping me out and interacting with me, when really the whole point of being in the group was to get that.
Well, and I've been in some groups online too that you don't even know who the group owner is, because that person kind of pops in every once in a while, drops something, and then walks away. And they don't interact with their group. I've been in some groups where you know exactly who the group owner is, because the group owner is very active in their group, spends a lot of time answering people's questions, and prompts people to start discussions.
Which is usually the best way, I think, to run a group, because if you go the other path where you just sort of pop in and you don't really try and formulate the discussion, what ends up happening, and I've seen this in a lot of Facebook groups that I've joined, which I maybe even liked for a while, is they end up being places where people show up long enough to share their latest blog post, their latest product, their latest service, and then they don't even interact in the group anymore until the next time they come in to drop it, and it ends up being just a long feed of advertisements that probably no one's reading.
Yeah, and I'm in a group like that right now, and it's really sad because, one, no one is taking the helm of the group and saying, okay, let me help you develop your business. And two, I think business owners that are trying to learn how to leverage Facebook think that this is an okay thing to do. They see everybody else doing it, so then they start doing it. And then that's how they think it's okay to build your business. And then they wonder why Facebook isn't working for them. because, well, I'm putting my web link and, I'm dropping my phone number and nobody's calling me. Facebook must not be effective.
And think about it this way too. If you have any groups like that you belong to, all you do is drop your latest article or content to try and attract people's attention and you don't spend any time looking at anything in there, why would anyone else?
Right. And I want you to talk a little bit about what you've done on Twitter, because I think a lot of people are kind of weary of Twitter because it moves so quickly, but you've had really good success with your world building podcast on Twitter.
Well, a lot of it started off with doing some research into Twitter and saying, okay, what hashtags do I want to use? That is a tough one. I mean, you can search the hashtags manually and you'll see a whole bunch of responses that you can kind of guess. There's a website called hashtagify.me. And the problem with hashtags is you and a certain number of people might use a certain lingo, but a greater number of people use a word that's similar to it. And hashtagify.me will actually help identify what are the other hashtags around the ones you use. And you can put together a strategy. And so what I do is when I have what I call a ideal week, I have a different image trying to sell the content I'm sharing that week. So I share one different piece out every day, even though it's the same content, but there'll be a different image and a different hook trying to get people in. And then every day I share a different hashtag. So I have a 7 hashtag plan every week. And I take whatever my new content is and I share on each of those words. And then when I'm done, I sort of put the rest of them off into a library so they can kind of pop up randomly from that point on.
Well, and I think that one thing that you've done is you built relationships on Twitter by interacting with people and by sharing other people's content.
That's an amazing one, and everyone gets into a rhythm sometimes where they don't do this on Twitter. And I always try and respond to people who ask me questions on Twitter. That's step 1. Step 2 is when I'm searching through a hashtag that's important to me, I actually do read some of this stuff. It's like I read the post. If there's something that really catches my eye, I think is really cool, I will respond and let the person know, because I love it when people tell me they love my stuff on Twitter.
Right. And you're really good about sharing people's stuff on Twitter as well.
Yes. I would say I share more content out for other people, especially if you're someone who's been a guest on my podcast. I grab your feed and I have a special time where that feed goes out all of the time. And then I have other keywords that I grab in. And now I'm starting to share some business stuff out as well too. But what I try and do is I try and share content I want to read. And sometimes I don't have the chance to read all of the articles, but if it hooks me in, I let them know that it hooked me in. And I sometimes I'll even get into messaging with people and I get into long conversations with people on Twitter, one-on-one, kind of back and forth. If you send it to them and then they respond, sometimes you can have a long conversation on Twitter might be like 10 tweets back and forth, but sometimes that builds into a different relationship outside of Twitter.
Right. And, so seeing the success that Jeff had on his Twitter feed, I actually decided to check out what hashtags could do for Small Biz Life. And so we started using hashtags about a month ago, and we had our best month outside of new and noteworthy last month because people are finding those hashtags. They're liking my posts. They're connecting with me on Twitter. They're sharing stuff out. And so by building a community and putting information out there that people think is useful, they will help you grow your community for you.
I would say the 2 most important things to know on Twitter, if you don't use Twitter a lot yourself, the headline you use is really important. You kind of want to be able to get out quickly the type of content you're sharing. I usually use the word episode in with mine so I can have one quick word that will describe what it is, and then something that will make them want to click in on it. Images work better than they ever have on Twitter. but headlines, or if you have an image, the text on your image is really important to get people to click through. But hashtags are still very important because, especially for someone like me, if I want to do world building research and I go check out the world building hashtag to do research on my own, I want to see what else other people are doing. Or maybe I'm looking for inspiration, or I want to be there interacting at that level. When I do that, people who use that hashtag are the ones that come up first.
Right. And it's kind of interesting because when Jeff was doing some research about a week ago, he was doing research on the world building hashtag, and he's actually the number 2 influencer on Twitter for world building.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because it's not a hugely used hashtag, but if I look at, there's like only 4 or 5 influencers even listed for it, but the closest other person to me had 10 times the audience I did.
Right. So you can kind of see how knowing a social media platform and how to use it can help you grow that audience. But if you think that you can just drop content and not interact with people and not build relationships with people, even online, your business isn't going to last very long.
And yes, and I think the biggest key for audience building, you have to interact with your audience people. I know a lot of people. I got an email from someone because in my email newsletter, I actually tell people to email me. I'll give them something to email me about. And I actually get emails from people. And what I find, and I got a letter, I think about last month, where the person's like, I hope you're going to actually respond to me, that I'll respond to me, because most of the people who I sign up for the newsletters don't even take the time, even though they asked me to. And I responded to them. And I would have, without her saying that. Now, obviously, sometimes things might disappear, but I want to interact with everyone who wants to interact with me. If it's a one-on-one through email, that's awesome. And it might not be a full book I'm sending back to them in text, but I want to know that I got the gist of what they told me. And if I have any questions, I'll ask them. Or if I want to say, hey, share your link with me or let me know more, I'll say that. But, you have to interact with your audience or they will never grow to appreciate you. Not to the same level. Your content might be great and they might go there for a while for great content. But if they don't like you, especially if you're a content-driven marketer, you're going to lose your audience.
Exactly. Okay, so this is that's part 1, right? Is you need to build an audience and interact with them. Okay, and you can do that through a Facebook group. You can do that on Twitter. You can do that through Google+. You can do that even on Instagram. Like if you post stuff up on Instagram and people respond to it, like respond back. I hate the drop the mic people. Here's my post. Gone. Okay, so don't do that. So the other, you can also do this through your email, right? So we've talked about using email lists before, and I'll link that episode in the show notes as well. But I like what Jeff does, and I do the same thing at the end of my emails, is I say, hey, if you've got any questions about this topic, just hit reply to this email and you can get into my inbox and I will answer your questions. Invite people to interact with you, create relationships that way as well.
The biggest thing I believe is you have to care about your customers. They shouldn't be someone you're trying to beat in a competition. You're trying to get the zero, you win, they lose scenario. That's a great way to maybe make short-term money. It's a horrible way to conduct business. You need win-win relationships, and to have those relationships go 2 ways. Exactly.
So the second piece of this is that you have to have well-defined services and products. I got to tell you, I've made this mistake. Okay. Until recently, I'm working on it now. So I have a website called accountinginfocus.com, which is a website for college students who are taking intro accounting courses. I also have some people that are taking the CPA exam who are using it. I have people in some higher level accounting classes that are using it. But I've got 50,000 unique visitors a month that visit this website. And we're making like a couple $100 a month, off of ads and stuff on the site. But I've got nothing to sell them. 50,000 people, and I've got nothing to sell them. So I'm working on that, right? So we're working on some digital products that are deliverable, But most people online would kill to have an audience like that. And I know a lot of bloggers that are writing along and they're writing great content and they're writing awesome posts and people are going to their site and they're liking and they're sharing and they're joining the email newsletter and they're doing, it's awesome. And they can't make money off of it because they have no products. They have no services. And even some of them have services, but they're not well defined. There's like, if you need help, call me. Okay, well, what does that mean?
Or they fail to ask the basic question to their audience, which is, here's my service. Do you want to buy it?
Right. And that's the thing, too, is that I've seen people who have books or products or courses, and you can't find them on the site because they're so far buried down, or maybe there's, a little box on the bottom of their sidebar that says, oh, I have this thing, but they're not ever pushing it. And so there has to be a balance between constantly selling and never selling at all.
And part of that is knowing your audience, which you learn from interacting with them. But the other thing is, if they're not interested in you or your products, they will not be there. And you don't necessarily want them there if they don't want to interact with you or your products. And, if some people only want to interact with you in a free way, well, they're going to get that part of your content and they won't get all of it. But if they want that, they're not going to be offended by you occasionally offering up a book. How many people do you know who's written a book? They want to be an author. They want to make money selling their book. They spend maybe a month before they launch. They get a bunch of people in a group and they try and sell everyone in this little Facebook group their book. And then their book will launch. They will sell X number of books and maybe a few more that they happen to catch while they're in the Amazon noticeability range. And then they never talk about their book again. They have no way to try and sell their book again. And that's fine if you want to use a book as sort of a piece of just building authority and you don't want to or need to make money off of it. But if you want to sell your book, you have to come up with a way to always be selling your old books. People who sell books today successfully who make money don't just do it at a launch. At a launch, they will make some more money. But over time, they're going to keep selling that book over and over and over again. Their book sales don't go to zero on their old books.
Well, and I think that's one of the biggest issues with especially authors. They put out a book and they talk about it for 3 or 4 weeks, and then they're all focused on the next book. And they don't spend time marketing the old book. And they think that it's got to be this constant cycle of putting out new products and new services rather than trying to cultivate more sales from the audience they already have.
And just do the math at some point. If you release one book a year and get 500 sales approximately a year, you are losing so much money. Even if you're taking money home, the amount of time and effort that it takes to put in even a 30,000 page, a small book like that, 30,000 word, not 30,000 page, that would actually be really long.
Yeah, that's kind of epic, yeah.
But a 30,000 word book, it's going to cost you, if you do it even mediocre, it's probably going to cost you a couple $1,000s to get it together in money out of pocket, not counting the time to put all of the words down and then to edit the words, which you should be doing. And then you're not going to even try and sell it. And the thing is, you don't have to be sitting there always pushing it, but have targets that go out occasionally in your emails when you don't have a call to action to talk about your old books. And some people do it very well, and it's not in your face. I can think of J.S. Marin as one good example of a small indie author who does a great job with that, where he's always trying to sell his old books, and he'll sometimes put them on sale. He'll do little things here or there to try and generate sales for all this great work that he's done.
Right. And, it's funny because I was just thinking about as Jeff was saying that. So the product that I'm working on right now for Accounting in Focus, just the time that it took me, if I build that out to a client, I've got about $3,000 worth of time into this product. And so the way that I'm developing these PDFs that I'm going to sell is I want them to be evergreen content. The nice thing with the basic accounting courses is things really don't change. So I can write content, put that up, and sell that indefinitely. And it's funny because for people who follow Pat Flynn, that's how Pat Flynn started. Is he wrote a site that had a lot of really good content for a certification, developed PDF content and guides to help people with that certification, and then sells them. And they still sell now. So you've got to get out of the mindset that you're constantly in product development mode. And I even, again, going back to authors, I was talking to an author a couple months ago and I said, all right, cool. So what are you doing? The person said, well, I'm starting my next book. I said, but you just released a book. Well, no, I'm starting the next book. Okay, well, are you selling the previous book? Well, it's there. People will find it. No. You have to, no. See, you have to generate the sales for your products and services. Because the thing is, people have a very short attention span, right? So even if they go to your site and they read some of your content, unless you're saying, hey, I have this thing, or hey, sign up for my email newsletter, and I'll give you more content, and at some point I'm going to try to sell you my stuff.
I think a great thing to keep in mind is when you're really putting your site together, before your hands go off of a product where you're not actively marketing it anymore, make sure that there is a way for people who are in your newsletter at least, or maybe through occasional posts to social media, who are going to have the opportunity to be introduced to your older work and get a chance to buy that too. And when you can do that, the entire time when you're refining the process, every time you come out with a different product or service, you want to make it easier for them to act on their instinct when they want to buy it. That's why I always think the most dangerous and smart thing Amazon did was add that, just fill out your information and then you'll have to click once and you can buy a product.
Buy it now. But I want you to think about not just developing products or developing services. And I see this a lot with service providers. They don't clearly articulate what they do. And so when you go to their website and you're like, wow, this is great. I like your content. It's really good. Your pictures are great, but I don't really know how you can help me. So, I've seen with, interior designers. They develop the most beautiful content I have ever seen online.
Yes, where pictures definitely, are definitely 1,000 or 2,000 words.
Right. So you sit there and you go, okay, so what does this person do though? Like, do they refinish furniture? Like, can I buy pieces from them? Can they do like virtual consults? Like I can take my iPad through my house and they'll be like, all right, here's things you can do. Do they only work locally and they come to my house and they do stuff for me? Like, I don't know. And so unless you clearly define the services that you'll provide for people, and again, this is something that I've not always been great with, you've got to make it easy for people to say, you know what? I like your stuff. I like you. And the services that you provide or the products that you provide are easily accessible for me, or they're not. Maybe your market is local and you've got people all over the country that are viewing your stuff. Maybe you've got to start to think about how you deliver those services or come up with a product that anybody can buy across the country.
I have a bit of homework for people today. If you like to go out to coffee shops and you have a website that markets whatever you do, offer to buy someone a cup of coffee, someone you do not know, and have your website up on the thing and just say, all I need as a favor is you just sit here and tell me what the person who does the site does.
Oh, we could do that in the group.
Yes, we could do that in a group, but ask people, what do I do? And you don't tell them anything. You have them look at the website and watch what they go through to figure it out. Because sometimes, even when it makes a lot of sense to you, you think it's really simple. It's because you understand the industry you're in. You understand the lingo of your industry. And a lot of times, really good-looking websites are written not to their audience, but to other people who work in the field that you do. And if someone who needs your service or just a stranger can't figure out what you do, you have to ask yourself, how can I make it better? That's probably a really good exercise for all of us to do.
Well, it's funny because I remember, I think it was in Jamie Masters' group. She did that where she picked people's websites and we would be on a conference call and she'd say, okay, let's look at this website. What do you think? What does this person do? And it was funny how, like, some people, when they left, they felt really dejected because they thought that their site was awesome and it was crisp and it was clear and it was beautiful. And the problem is that they could not convey their message to the people that arrived at the site. People didn't know what they were supposed to click on. People didn't know where they were supposed to go. And so that's one thing, especially when you're looking at your website.
And that's really brutal when you're looking at your website, trust me, because if it's done well, in a scenario like that, you might have 30 or 40 or 60 eyes on your site at that moment. And if you're reading the feed, they're like, I don't know what, what, hey. And you're like, no, and your head explodes. Because there will always be people who do not understand. And the better test is to get people who are part of your audience. That's the best, is if you can find people who actually you are trying to sell to and get their opinion. But it does not hurt just to get random people and ask them, hey, what do they do on this website? I'll buy you a coffee. Just tell me what they do on this website.
Mm-hmm. And I think, it's really important to make sure that you know what your objective is on your website. So when people go there, what do you want them to do? And once you have that idea in mind, and for a lot of people, they want people to sign up for their email newsletter. You've got to do it in such a way that your audience gets enough content, they get enough exposure to the site before you're like, hey, email, sign up. So one thing that we really like, there's a plugin from KingSumo, which are the AppSumo people, which if you're not following the AppSumo folks, they have some amazing deals for businesses. KingSumo's app allows you to do an exit intent pop-up. And that's a pop-up that you can use for anything. You can try to sell products through it. You can use it for email, whatever you want to use it for. But what it does is it's smart enough that it knows where people are going on your website. And so when somebody goes up to close a tab or to close a browser, that's when the pop-up will come up. So it's like, basically, okay, I'm done with the site for now. I'm going to close out of it. Now the pop-up generates. That app also has something that's called a heat monitor
map.
A heat map. And what a heat map will do is it will tell you where people are hovering their mouse and where they're clicking on each page of your website. So if you're trying to get people to do a certain action, you can play with the placement of things on your website so that people will hopefully start to behave the way you want them to.
Now, here's a suggestion. If you're going to use more advanced analytics like heat maps, understand there's a resource cost to it. So don't leave them on all the time just to gather that type of data from your customers. If you have an actual marketing campaign going on, that's when you want to use stuff like that to get feedback, to make sure that your call to action's high enough on the page that they actually get to it before they go out.
Right, exactly. So, and that's another really good thing too, is that you want to make sure that you have a single clear call to action. because I've seen a lot on Facebook groups and Facebook pages and even in blog posts where you give people so many things that you want them to do that they do nothing. And I'll even tell you, like, the outro for the show needs to be redone because there's so many calls to action in the outro of the show that it's ridiculous. So you're probably going to hear a new outro very soon. But if you tell people like, hey, go do this and go do that and go do this and go do that and do these 80 other things, they're going to go, well, crap, which one am I supposed to do first? I don't know. Well, screw it. I'm not going to do any of them. I'm just going to sit here. So you have to be really careful when you're trying to get people to do something that you give them one thing to do. And that's why, like, I like in our emails where we say, hey, respond to this email and tell me this. You know, like when people sign up for my email newsletter, they get an email where I talk a little bit about the show. And then I respond back. And at the bottom, it says, now click reply on this email and tell me about your business. About 60% of people will do that, which is incredible when you think about it. But you have to make sure that you respond back to them if you do that. Again, right, that's the relationship building, that engagement. So this week, we'd like you to take a look at what you're doing with your audience, okay? And if you're building one or not. If your audience piece is strong, then start looking at your products and services. Okay. But see, now I'm not telling you to do both this week. I just want you to do one. Okay. But make sure that, because the audience piece is by far, I think, the most important of the two. If you have something to sell, then you need an audience.
Yes. There's always going to be a percentage of your time that will probably be developing products and services. There will always be a percentage of the time developing audience outside of sales.
Right. And so that's the thing. So even if you don't have products or services yet,